Okay, so we're continuing on with the tutorials based on Revit to real time, and I'm looking at the Las Pintitas project, Camino Nueva Vida, that I've been working on. And I've gone in and done a very rough job of applying texture maps and reassigning a few materials and getting the color palette somewhere like the client wanted. And what I'm going to do next is, as I described, Showcase is not quite there yet with understanding what we want to do with architecture. One of the things being, it kind of wants to put a building on a turntable and view it rather than being immersive into a space. And one of the features that it's working with in regards to that is the environment situation. So if I look at the environments, lighting and environments, let's open that dude up and go to the library. You can see that what I have applied right now is this dry lake scenery, mainly because I like the lighting quality that starts to generate. But we really want to start getting more of the actual context from the neighborhood into this scene. So the first thing that I'm going to do that is I'm going to replace this dry lake scenery with scenery from the actual site. And this process is rough. I need to put a lot of refinement in on it, but I think you'll start to see the potential of where this could head. So the Las Pintitas site is right here. And essentially what I did, and I'm not going to go through the entire process, but I used Street View to start capturing these different views of the actual site, and so to do that, I've got Street View activated, and I'm essentially hitting my print screen button on the keyboard. I'm hopping into Photoshop, File, New, and then pasting the screenshot right in. And so I'm just cropping out the portion that I want to get a series of views. And, I want to make sure that there's a little bit of an overlap on each one. So what I have is view 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there's a truck, fortunately, in one of these. Google is not perfect, but it works pretty well. So what I want to do is stitch all these photographs together. There's a great tool in Photoshop to do that. Takes a little bit of manual setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size. I'm going to expand the canvas to the left of this image, and I'm going to make its width about 50 inches. I won't need near that much once it comes together, but that will give me plenty of room to get each photograph in place. So select all, edit, copy, and paste. And you can start to see, that's going to seem somewhere right around there, but I'm just going to sort of line them up side by side. Select all, edit, copy, paste. And again, you can see that one should be sitting somewhere right about there. Last view, select all, edit, copy, and paste. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select my 4 layers, edit, auto align layers, and I'm going to use the automatic function for it. And it's a little bit of a mess here. Let's see if I can select those first 2 layers. It didn't do a perfect job of that, but if I move those over, if I just nudge these guys over, I should be able to get it exactly where I want it. And well, I'm not sure why it didn't do those layers at all. That's kind of odd. I'm curious as to whether or not it just didn't want to do the background layer. I had a much higher success rate with doing that earlier when I was testing this process out. But so, just kind of manually pushing a few of them around to begin to get this, which is pretty darn close. You know, there's a little bit of a seam right here, but that's not going to bother me too much. There's another seam right here. So, you know, let's look at just removing those really quick. So I'm going to use the spot healing brush, a little bit smaller on it. And again, this is definitely background kind of stuff here. Oh, I need to merge my layers. Let's merge visible, and let's get rid of that seam. And, you know, I'm really being kind of a slop artist with this, but again, the goal isn't for this to be sort of a very direct, sort of in-your-face part of what we're seeing in Showcase. The goal for this is quite simply to get some background context in. And there's a little bit, you know, I could probably pull that little seam right there a little bit out as well. So really quickly, I've got that panoramic, and I've already built a different panoramic, and this is actually on the other side of the site. So if I go back to the map, I actually set this panoramic up. So this is my site. I didn't want this portion right here. It's really a dense urban neighborhood. I actually came all the way back to this street and captured a panoramic around that edge. And so that gave me this north image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both of those images onto an existing HDR file that is already set up for Showcase. So coming into this, I'm simply going to go edit, or actually not edit, but select all, edit, copy, and I'm going to paste that in place. And now I need to transform it. So I'm going to start by sizing it at about half. Right about like that. Let's drag in a guide here really quick, right at 7. And then I'm going to go ahead and stretch it down to approximately half as well. And the stretching doesn't bother me a whole lot because I know, you know, as this shows up in the background, I should be able to get pretty close to the idea of the context that's there. So I've got the south edge. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the north. Select all, edit, copy, and then we'll paste this in place. Edit, transform, scale. So those two images are going to start to make up the background. I'm going to go ahead and hide my background and merge visible with this. And what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this sky up just a little bit as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do a rectangular marquee selection, edit, transform, scale. I really didn't want to scale up the trees too much, but I'm perfectly comfortable sort of stretching the sky element out. Select, deselect. I suppose maybe I could have used the spot healing brush or something with that as well, but this should work pretty well for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a file, save as, and oh, I need to flatten this one more time. I'm sorry. Let's go back, flatten the image, file, save as, and this is the file that I've already built, but I'm going to overwrite this. So it's my environment file, background plate, gradient Las Pintitas. Actually, I won't overwrite it because that should be an A typo. Save. Okay, so that is ready to bring in now into Showcase. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep this dry lake as a template, but I'm going to go to its properties. And the first thing that I want to place is I want to actually use that background as my lighting guide. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this file. So there's the original image. and I'm going to load up the image from my project folder. Las Pintitas. And I'm going to go ahead and say, well, and you actually can already see the difference that has made in terms of the lighting. And it's also gotten rid of, I just want sort of a flat color on the base, because I want to bring in the base context from another file that I've built in SketchUp. So right away you can see that this file is now looking much different. And ideally we can start getting that working at a better scale, but we can get it working in such a way that we're bringing in some of the neighborhood context as well. So things are a little bit out of scale with it. As I bring more context in, I'm hoping that doesn't matter quite as much. I also know that I want to rotate this around a bit. So I'm going to move, the highway is actually running on this side right here. So I'm going to move the rotation around. And it looks like it needed to go a full sort of 180. A little bit less than that. And then on the background, it's already overwritten both of those files that were previously there. So I'm just going to rename this Las Pintitas as well. Save and close. Okay, so I've got the basic background in place. And now what I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and bring in more context as well. And this time it's going to come from a SketchUp file. And I would actually walk through this in SketchUp, but SketchUp and my screencasting software do not play together nicely at all. It's pretty much an instant crash. So I'll just show you a couple of JPEGs that I captured out of that. So this is the context. You can see the highway. There's the building site right there. The file output that I'm using, I'm saving as an FBX file. And the one thing that you'll want to go back in and make sure you have checked is triangulate all faces. It seems to do a much cleaner job of putting together pieces from SketchUp and closing up the geometry correctly if you are triangulating. So again, I'm an FBX file, triangulate, make sure export texture maps is on, and we will bring that file in by going File, Import, Import Files. That is CNV Context 2, and Import. Now, again, if you've watched many of my tutorials at all, one of the things you'll know is I'm always talking about converting software to software. And unfortunately, the scale factor from SketchUp versus the scale factor in Showcase are two different things. The issue is centimeters and inches in this particular case. And I believe 1 centimeter, or actually 1 inch, is 2.54 centimeters. So I know pretty quickly that this is way too small, and I know that one of the two programs is focused more on centimeters versus inches as a scale factor or as a base 1 inside of the programming. So what I'm going to do with this particular file right here is I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Transform Properties, and I know I need to scale this up 2.54 in every direction to get my scales to match. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and slide this across now and rotate it in the XY plane. And then I'm going to move it into place. And I believe the project fits something about like that. Okay, so the next thing that I need to do is I need to modify the size of this sky dome to incorporate a little bit more. And let's also, you know, I want to get rid of a few things. That's the larger map that imported in from SketchUp. I don't really need that. I do want this environment to be slightly larger. So again, I'm going to go to the properties of my backdrop, my background image, and I'm going to go ahead and type in factor of 20 to increase that up a bit. It looks like it needs to go up just a little bit more. You can see where I'm clipping off the edge of a building here and here. So let's go up just a little bit more. Let's see if 25 won't get it. Yeah, that looks good. So let's go ahead and close that. So as I'm on the inside, I should start to see those elements working. The reflection off the map is a little bit nuts. So let's look at the materials. So I'm going to go to material properties on this, and if we scale down, I believe there's going to be reflections. We want to turn that off. So that already looks a lot better. And for the most part, I'm okay with the texture maps on the buildings. But let's see if we can't get those at a slightly more muted kind of color. So again, I'm going to select them, and we're going to go to the material library. And I just want to go to Showcase Materials. And let's see if we can't find a more muted material to put on there. And I believe that under miscellaneous, I don't really want autoclay, but let's just put a generic material on them. And then under its properties, so let's come up to materials and scene, and let's look at generic and its properties. And let's give it just a slightly warmer kind of tone. So I'm going to shift it this direction. And do something a little bit like that. Maybe a shade less pink. There we go. And again, I really do not want reflections on them. I want to keep them matte and keep them simple. So that should be good. So now what I've got is I have my project, and I'm beginning to build some context in. And, you know, the things that I would start to go back in and edit for sure are, you know, the trees and flowers. It's a little bit crazy right now. They're way too high. I don't think that there's a lot that I can do right now with them in terms of the environment. But let's do check under properties and see if I can't move that down a little bit. Background. And there's my rotation on the background, but there's really no option to set a height. So, you know, what I would do for something like this in particular is probably decrease that scale down in my original Photoshop file. I'm going to save you sort of me editing through that process in hopes that you guys can just start to see the goal and the concept of getting this additional context in. You can see it's really doesn't have a real significant bearing on the speed at which Showcase is working and moving around. It's still behaving in a really kind of responsive way, which is great. And now I'm ready to start setting up, you know, a new walkthrough on this with a little bit more context, as long as I can get my steering wheel to work. The joys of sort of new software here. Let's close that. Open up the steering wheel one more time. There we go. There's my look tool. So I can start to get a little bit of additional context in. So as I'm navigating around the site, hopefully we don't see any huge trucks getting ready to run into the building or anything like that, but you're starting to get an idea of the project in a little bit better context with those couple of quick steps using Street View and importing additional models into Showcase.